Dom list and got it. But here we are. The players have actually started. Looks like they started a little bit before camera there. Looks like we had turn one. We had a Lush Portico, which maybe milled this Life in the Loam and we dredged.
Oh,
that might have been what's happening.
Turn one, Lush Portico surveil Loam into the graveyard. Like, it just doesn't get any better than that.
Well, how about if we loam back these 3 lands as well? Dom now going to be able to play a Thespian Sage and passing the turn. Once upon a time for Corey. Going to do this in Dom's end step, it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like Corey lining that up in the end phase. I want to see. Yeah, Corey does have a Lush Portico, so potentially wants to see what is off of the once upon a time before surveilling to get the most amount of information as to what we are looking for off of the surveil. So see what Corey goes ahead and takes here. It's going to be another Reliquary. 2016, maybe 15 modern staple. Love to see it.
Staple is such a word.
It is one of the words.
It is one of the words. Yeah, it was good back then. I actually played that deck back then for fun. Back before Mason actually played Magic.
Yeah, that was like right around when the Retreat came out, right? The Blue Retreat. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was around that time.
Yeah. That was back when I used to just play like, local little, Wednesday night Magic, Tuesday night Standard, or whatever it was back in the good old days. Lush Portico going to put a Windswept Heath in the graveyard. Draw a card.
See what Corey's got in the grip. I see a Savannah, a Swords to Plowshares, the Knight of the Reliquary that we know about. And I maybe see a full art card in here that that's a Gaddock Teeg is turn 2 here for Corey. Now, Gaddock Teeg, reasonably powerful in a lot of matchups. Lands is probably the one matchup where it has literally no text. If you look at Dom's deck list, it's Elvish Reclaimer, Sphere Resistance, Mox Diamond, Exploration, Loam, Crop Rotation, and so we got a Grizzly Bear in play.
Yeah, and discard it to either, so it sort of is what it is here. As it looks like Dom is playing his Cradle and passing. Decided not to dredge with Loam there.
Interesting.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if Dom doesn't want to expose himself to like some sort of Bojuka Bog stuff and knew his mana was tied up. But neither Reliquary is going to come down for Corey.
Yeah, and if Dom has a Crop Rotation, we are done here. Crop Rotation, sacrifice the Portico, go get Dark Depths, make it 2020, easy peasy. So Dom's thinking here.
Yeah, and you see Dom,
the rotation.
And honestly, I really like this from Corey. He had the Swords to Plowshares, but he seems so unfavored, especially in this situation. Just tap out, try to get there, didn't get there. Could have played a slower approach, but was in a pretty bad spot. So Dom's going to move up one game incredibly quickly here in top 8. That's why I don't bet against Dom Harvey. Listen,
I talked about how I thought that Corey maybe had a slight edge in the deck construction, and Dom said, "You know what? Hold my beer. Here's a 2020."
Yeah, and the play really helping out there as well. So Dom really getting him quickly. Let's take a look over at Corey's sideboard and see what he might be bringing in against Dom in this matchup. In Corey's sideboard, we have 3 Doorkeeper Thralls, 2 Force of Vigors, 2 Deafening Silence, 2 Red Elemental Blast, 2 Endurance, 1 Mawloc, a Collector Oof, Gaddock Teeg number 2, and a Fairy Macabre.
Well, first and foremost, before I give my expert analysis, I'm going to have to read Mawloc real quick here. This is the thing that fights, right? 2/2, ATB fights. Okay, so I don't know if we want that one in this particular matchup, but as far as what we do want, Doorkeeper Thrall does not really have a ton of text here. Gaddock Teeg, as we said, Gaddock Teeg is a blank. Endurance could be interesting to help fight over Life from the Loam, right? If you expect the game to be about that kind of stuff. Same thing with Fairy Macabre. That could be interesting at fighting over that. And the Force of Vigors are pretty good because there's the presence of, Mox Diamond, Exploration, and Urza Saga in Dom's deck.
Yep. Along with some cards like Lavaspur Boots, which maybe we'll see in game number 2. Let's check out Dom's sideboard real quick and see what he's up to. Dom has 4 Swords to Plowshares, 2 Torpor Orbs, 2 Sylvan Libraries, 2 Force of Vigors, 1 Pithing Needle, 1 Haywire Mite, 1 Dismember, 1 Surgical Extraction, 1 Caracas.
Yeah, so we mentioned Corey. I think, the reason that I thought Corey was favored in game one is because Corey has the Knight of the Reliquaries. If he's able to untap with those, can kind of, get a little bit of cooking going on. But now that Dom has access to 4 copies of Swords to Plowshares and 1 Dismember, I think I maybe like in the post board games, I think Dom improves a little bit more than Corey does. Definitely wants those removal spells. You could consider your own Force of Vigors to help fight over Corey's Moxes, but there, I believe, are no copies of Urza Sagas in Corey's deck. Yeah, so no Sagas, which means it's really only fighting over Mox. Not sure if you want to go that route. Haywire Mite as a tutor target for Saga to kill Mox could be interesting. And Pithing Needle is weird, right? Because both players have Dark Depths, both players have Wasteland, both players, you know what I mean? So I don't know if you want to go towards Needle, but that could be something. And give me the Caracas as well.
Yeah, it might be a situation where Dom maybe wants to have a needle for like Naya the Reliquary, and if he's behind, he can name something, like the stage. But we'll have to sort of see how he wants to do it. This tournament is open deck list for the top 8 only. When we do coverage for these events, we do allow open deck lists. Otherwise, it gets a little weird. But that means these players are looking over the deck list right now. I can see them sort of sideboarding, and it's going to be really interesting. And like you mentioned, it feels like Dom got away with it a little bit because so many of the cards that are good in the mirror were like stop the opponent from going for it are just in Dom's sideboard. It seems like he's sort of being like, yeah, game 1, it kind of just a race anyways. I'll just try to go fast. And then game 2 and 3, I hope to short up a bit. And just sort of got there in game 1, which is sort of, like how you succeed. He picked the matchups he wanted to beat in the tournament, lost a little edge in the mirror, and just sort of, got lucky in the spots you need to get lucky being on the play.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely got away with one there, at least, like we said, in terms of the deck lists. Now, there's a couple of interesting cards in Corey's deck list. We saw Corey briefly on camera for a moment, and maybe there's some cards that we haven't seen. Stuff like Lumbering Mega Sloth, Mawlock. There's a Minskin Boo in Corey's deck, so just kind of has a little bit more additional threats, and that's kind of why I thought that maybe Corey would have an edge. Where if the game is about, we talked about this earlier when Zoe played that mirror match, it was a lot of neither player can really ever go for Dark Depths, because if the other player has a single mana open, that can represent crop rotation for Wasteland. Or you could just have your own Thespian stage and you can respond and copy their depths. So it's kind of this weird back and forth. And Corey having access to those threats, in a game 1 situation, now that Dom has more answers for those threats, I think Dom is, I really like Dom's position post board.
Yep. Honestly, I really think cards like Lumbering Mega Sloth might be a big part of Corey's way to win, because we saw how the games can get kind of weird where you're stalemating each other. Sort of like, I have a bunch of Wastelands, so do you. I have a Boseiju for your thing. Being able to play something like Lumbering Mega Sloth just gives you the biggest thing on the battlefield. So if Corey can position that, this could be the key to success here against Dom.
Exactly. Looks like I think Dom maybe has kept 7. Corey potentially on a mulligan to 6 here. Have to see if we can find a hand that he likes. Another card that was very interesting in Corey's deck list, one that we really haven't seen today, is Legolas's Quick Reflexes. Not sure if we can get that one pulled up on screen, but because players, both have access to open deck lists. Normally, Legolas's Quick Reflexes maybe not something that you would want in a mashup like lands, but this card being able to protect your creature from those 4 copies of Swords to Plowshares, especially because how much we talked about the Knight of the Reliquaries and those additional threats really, really matter in this matchup. Quick Reflexes could be something that, if it's able to counter a timely Swords to Plowshares, that could be very, very good for Corey.
Yep. We are going to see a Forces to take off once upon a time here. Once upon a time, Dom's having a weekend like that right now with the back-to-back top 8 before flying out to Seattle to play the Pro Tour next week. We're going to see the Force for turn for Corey into the Mox Diamond. Going to discard Dryad Arbor. Has a Force of Vigor in hand as one of the other cards. And it looks like we have Green Sun Zenith.
For 1. That's going to either get a Elvish Reclaimer or a Dryad Arbor. Presumably, we're getting the Elvish Reclaimer, yes. So that is going to hit the battlefield. And Dom's going to go ahead and see if maybe Dom has some explosive mana generation as well. Could be Exploration, could be Mox Diamond. We'll have to see. And there is a copy of his a Reclaimer of his own.
Yep. Dom is looking pretty safe from any sort of 2020 shenanigans happening right now. But Corey definitely has the advantage when it comes to the board being developed. And I feel like Corey's deck is a little bit better at this fair game plan than Dom says.
Right, yeah, because of the presence of those Knight of the Reliquaries, the Mega Sloths, the Minskin Boo, even the Green Sun Zenith, right? Green Sun Zenith can just go ahead and find a threat. Now, I guess the trade-off here is Corey, as we said, does not have any copies of Urza Saga. So Dom is able to generate multiple bodies with Saga, and Corey really doesn't have the ability to do that. So maybe if the game does if the game is more about a fair style of thing where it's just kind of like creatures and battlefield presence, Dom can maybe make some giant constructs, but Corey's threats can sort of outpace those constructs.
God, a Sejiri Steppe. I need a protection.
Not Flagstones.
Excuse me, that's a Flagstone. It looks like Sejiri Steppe. That makes more sense. I thought, I was like, well, that might be a lethal line that I don't see.
Turn 2 lethal.
Guys, go get a planes. Looks like Dom is. So Dom is pointing out like which one.
Right,
because you have to surveil.
Yep, if you Flagstones for the Portico, you have to surveil before you resolve the Reclaimer. I think, right?
Yeah, because there'd be 2 effects on the stack, right? Like the sacrifice trigger and that. And I think what's happening here is Corey is saying, I'm just grabbing this one because I know it'll be my second one, and we're just sort of,
yeah, shortcutting.
I'm just shortcutting.
So,
yeah, Reclaimer, you can flip to the front. Who cares?
Yeah, Flagstones gets the planes, and then Reclaimer gets the Portico.
So we're gonna get a surveil here for Corey. Unclear what's happening. Well, maybe what happened is Corey did just mess up the surveil. Yeah, maybe. Definitely could just be possible.
Possible, yeah, because you saw the players kind of hand motioning and stuff, and Dom was like, Corey was put the surveil. Corey pointed to the Portico, and then Dom was like, or there's some mentioning. So yeah, most likely Corey probably, I'm assuming, must have just Flagstones for the Portico, and because of that, lost that surveil because you would surveil and then finish resolving the Reclaimer after that.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if maybe we should have stopped. We probably should have just done the surveillance, see if there's some card we wouldn't have been. But I guess we don't have Loam in our deck, so it's not as likely as like Dom. Speaking of which, Dom not having much fast mana this game.
Yeah, just the second basic land here for Corey, representing holding up Elvish Reclaimer. And Dom got the boots with the spur.
Boots with the spur. Lavaspur Boots, one of the new cards from OTJ, gives haste and ward 1 for an equip of 1 and a cost of 1 mana.
Yeah, extremely potent with specifically Urza Saga. Because before, imagine a battlefield where it's just, one Urza Saga, maybe one artifact and nothing else. It's on chapter 2. And you would do the math and say, okay, well, my opponent can make a construct end step, untap, make a second construct, but I'm only getting attacked by 1. And now that you're being attacked by both of them, if the boots hits the battlefield, it makes the saga, the clock of Urza Saga that much more potent.
So we're going to see a Dark Depths get chewed up here by Corey. Of note, Corey might just be using the Samson like a lumbering Mega Sloth onto the battlefield.
That would be nice. Any sloths? I would love to see a sloth here.
Land for turn. Honestly, I'll keep it a buck. I have no clue what that land is.
I was just going to ask you, Mason, what is that land? I'm taking a look at Corey's deck list. What could it be? So there's Wasteland.
That might be a weird Thespian stage.
Yeah, I got nothing. Well, absolutely nothing. Maybe Caracas?
Yeah, Caracas would make sense. Who knows?
Corey knows. We don't know.
True. Hopefully Dom knows. Dom plays Wasteland.
I'm getting word from the official Twitch chat that it is Caracas, so.
Let's go Twitch chat.
You'll love to see it.
We are going to see a potential activate their claim right into turn, sacrifice the forest.
And this is kind of exactly what we were talking about with these kind of lands adjacent mirrors before, where neither player really wants to kind of do anything, right? Because Corey has stage depths, Dom has Wasteland, Dom also has Reclaimer, which can go find another Wasteland. Dom, either player could have crop rotation. It's just like neither player really wants to commit to the stage depths bit.
Yep. Looks like Yavimaya Cradle is going to be the pickup for Corey here. Letting that Dark Depths produce some mana. Also turning on mana for Dom there with the Force on the Wasteland. I gotta say, I feel like Legacy, like the green and the black cards over the last 2 years have really just shot up in power.
Oh, they're busted.
Yeah.
What green card are you referring to?
Just like, they're not even like as strong as the black card. Like Elvish Reclaimer has sort of seen like a real resurgence. Once Upon a Time is obviously really good. But just in general, like the green strategies have been sort of figured out, right? Like we see Minsk and Boo as like, it's like kind of a thing, but not really. It just feels like the green decks have like really been solved in a way and allowed like this new angle of attacks that the Lance deck just couldn't play before. Before they were almost like prison-y control decks back in the old days. And now they're sort of like these mid-rangey combo decks.
And here I am. Thought you were referring to the one, the only Lumbering Megasloth.
I do love Lumbering Megasloth.
I hope we see it at some point. Now, we know that Dom has the Swords to Plowshares in his hands, so, it's probably not going to stay on the battlefield for very long, as we see an Urza Saga here for Dom. And this is kind of that situation where now it's like, it's so weird where Corey can like Reclaimer for a Wasteland to pop the Saga, but also Corey might just want to, get his own Saga where he just goes Reclaimer, sack something, go get my Thespian stage, copy your Saga. And it's this weird, like, just kind of jockeying for battlefield position where you would normally normally these decks are just race to make a 2020 as fast as possible. But because both these decks have so many ways to break that up, you can't really do that.
Yeah. Also, I feel like Corey's setting something up. He keeps activating the Reclaimer. I mean, maybe it's just his draw is changing his plan, but it feels like Dom is like moving with such like precision. And this is something too that like I feel like comes up a lot where, Legacy typically is a format where people who play a lot of Legacy do really well. They know the interactions. They're very tight, but they're not as like strong as the average Pro Tour player, right? Like the average Pro Tour player is much stronger, but the Pro Tour players don't play Legacy. There's no reason to. Dom plays Legacy every weekend and is like, played Worlds last weekend, top for the Pro Tours, playing the Pro Tour this coming week. Just someone who's clearly a master of the game. And we're seeing Green Sun Zenith be the cast here. Can't use the Dark Depths because we no longer have
the Yavimaya got destroyed. Well, this is awkward.
Yeah, I mean, we could get another Elvish Reclaimer. That Green Sun Zenith does go in our deck. I'm sure we'll catch that in a second.
Yeah, so Corey trying to cast the Green Sun for 2 or 3 rather, because that Dark Depths no longer produces mana, going to have to go for X equals 2 instead. Looks like thumbing a Sylvan Safekeeper, the Ole Rade special.
Yeah, and that card's very strong, so it's not even like Corey has burned his Green Sun Zenith. Definitely not the position he wants to be in.
You know what that card can protect, Mason?
Dark Depths.
Lumbering Megasloth. That's exactly what I thought you were going to say.
You knew I'd fail you. Yep. Oh, no. So we do see the activation of Elvish Reclaimer. Searching up the Portico. It is so funny to me that the green-white Surveil land is the most popular Surveil land.
Yeah.
Just in like every format. It makes a little bit of sense too, right? Like green-white's the color that doesn't really have this. So it's like the first one for them is so good. But...
yeah, the one exception, I guess, would be Connor's deck, but Connor is also a psychopath and is playing 3-tap lands, so we're not going to use that as an example.
Yeah. Well, he's got the Triumph. If Friend 6 was in the format, it'll all make more sense to me, but it's not, thank goodness. As we do see a Surveil on top there for Dom, he likes what he's seeing. Take a draw that Ursaga takes up to 2.
Yeah, and now Dom can start just kind of deploying these Saga tokens. Even finds an Ancient Tomb, which is kind of nice because now you can Ancient Tomb to activate the Saga and still also hold up the Reclaimer activation. So just kind of has a lot of stuff going on here. And it's been very interesting to see this game play out where, I kind of thought that Corey was just going to be able to assemble these early threats and kind of, like I said, get a battlefield presence with them, but that really hasn't materialized. We haven't seen the Knight of the Reliquaries. We haven't seen a Mega Sloth or anything like that. And it's really just been Corey kind of spinning tires for a little bit. And when both players are spinning tires and, neither player has a lot of battlefield presence, Urza Saga does a lot of work in those games.
Yeah. I wonder if we're going to even see Dom do the old activate Saga, sack it to the Reclaimer trick, go search another Saga, and really just take Corey to Grindtown. That would be a lot of mana, but it's definitely something that he could do in this position.
Yeah, and it's possible I just kind of underestimated how broken Ursa Saga was in this matchup. You know, if
Mhm.
neither player is going for the combo, if you've presumed that Dark Depths is sort of off the table, then what's the best way to generate threats? Well, Urza Saga does a really good job of that.
Yeah. And for what's worth, I kind of agreed like with your core concept about what Corey did. I think he maybe just didn't keep a hand that enabled it.
Yeah.
Like maybe we should have mulliganed a bit more. And we did have like a pretty strong start. So it's hard to mulligan that hand. That might have just been the spot where it's like, well, I don't want to have this hand, but am I really going to mulligan this like 8 out of 10? Probably not. What if Dom keeps a bad one? And we're going to see Pithing Needle. We'll get confirmation on what that's named in a second.
Mason, I think it's Boots time.
It might be Boots time. So we're going to see another Ancient Tomb come down. I mean, that construct's a 4/4. So, I mean, you attack for 8, put Corey down to 11.
9. Well, it would be 9 because of the +1/+0.
Oh, that's right. It gives +1/+0. Excuse me. I always forget that part.
So almost a 2-turn clock, and Dom has 5 lands in the graveyard, so you could even get one or potentially both of those Reclaimers in. So we'll have to see how Dom wants to proceed here, but Dom can really turn up the pressure this turn if he wants to.
Yeah. It's interesting. I wonder if Dom will just attack with one of the constructs and then just sort of like hold up Reclaimer. If nothing bad happens, search up another Urza Saga, make another construct, and then still have lethal in 2. Or if he wants to go for it. Looks like we named Sylvan Safekeeper. That's going to prevent the protection from one of the creatures. Yep.
Ooh, okay.
Cool.
We got a little Force of Vigor here for Corey, potentially targeting both of the constructs. Or I couldn't quite see if there was a point to the Pithing Needle, but at least killing one of the constructs that the Boots is going after. And yeah, the Sylvan Safekeeper, like Pithing Needle naming Sylvan Safekeeper is pretty good information for Corey if he picks up on it, because the reason Dom would want to name that is if he had something like a Swords to Plowshares, which, to be fair, Corey is probably aware of the presence of that in Dom's deck, because players do have open deck lists.
Yeah, but it's a good sign that might not be in his hand. Or is in his hand, excuse me. Also, this is sort of the turn for Corey to go for. Dom tapped down the Caracas, is only attacking for 2 with his construct. Yeah, I wonder if Corey had a 3/4 Reclaimer, didn't he?
I can't quite tell how many lands are in Corey's graveyard. I would guess more than 3.
Yeah, he's searched every turn. I love it. Dom's just like confident. You're taking the attack, right? And Corey's like, yeah, I can't block. It's too big.
Love to see it. Dom with the bluff attack. And yeah, I mean, now that the Sylvan Safekeeper is back online because the Pithing Needle was destroyed by the Force of Vigor, so Corey getting a Thespian stage here, and like you said, maybe smells blood in the water. Has the Safekeeper to be able to protect multiple times against something like the Caracas that's available for Dom, as well as the Swords to Plowshares that we both know is in, or we know is in hand. The players do not, but Corey can kind of infer that from the Pithing Needle, and now might be the best time to go for it. Not this turn's, well, not on his main phase, but at some point during Dom's end phase. Yeah,
kind of has to hope Dom goes for it. If he had Boots, this would have been a situation where he could have got the haste and won, but doesn't have the Lavaspur Boots like Dom does. And it looks like Dom's Ancient Tombing, activating Reclaimer, searching up something.
Yeah, Dom can pick up a Wasteland here to have a little bit more insulation against the Thespian stage stuff. But the weird part is if Dom gets a Wasteland tapped, then Corey can just say, okay, now I'll go for it. And funny enough, what's cool about the Safekeeper and the Safekeeper with the Mirror Leech token is if you sacrifice the Flagstones, normally it's a pretty hefty cost to sack a land to Safekeeper, but if you sack the Flagstones to protect, you actually get the land back and can do it again.
Yeah. We're going to see Dom just go for the other Urza Saga, and yeah, he looks like he's just going to try and chain constructs for a little bit here. Probably not going to see Dom tap out of his Swords plus Caracas combo again for a couple turns. Does feel like Dom has, a good amount of pressure here to kind of swing in for 5. I love it. Dom is just attacking his 2/2 into the 3/4. Stoneface.
Oh.
Dom knows he's getting away with murder, doesn't act at all.
No, I realized what's happening. So if Corey blocks with the Reclaimer, Dom can use his Reclaimer to get Bog.
Oh, sure. Is that even that bad for Corey? If it gets on to tap out? Maybe it is. I don't know.
You would lose the Reclaimer, so it is possible that maybe it's it's something that he doesn't want to do. But yeah, it looks like in any case, Corey is going to fire off that Dark Depths.
All right, looks like Dom is specifically said you've targeted this. It is a Dark Depths now, and I am responding to it's about to become a Merit Lage.
Yeah, so the way that this works at home for people who are interested is, if you haven't seen this before, Thespian stage becomes a copy of Dark Depths. You then have to choose which Dark Depths to keep, because of Legend Rule. Legend Rule, you keep the Thespian stage copy of Dark Depths. Then a trigger goes on the stack, because Dark Depths says when it has no counters, then sacrifice it. So Legend Rule, keep stage, trigger on the stack. Then after that trigger resolves, then the stage would be sacrificed.
Okay. This might also just be a situation where there's some confusion among players on where we're at as well. Looks like we're talking to the judge to make sure everything is cool. There might also just be some double checking on how Dark Depths works.
Yeah, Dark Depths is a weird one.
Yeah. Obviously, when it was designed, they thought about Thespian stage 15 years later.
Oh, yeah, you know that.
Yep. Future proofing. There might also just be some, like, Dom might just be, thought he had responded at the right time, but hasn't. Could be a situation where he learned it via Magic Online, and Magic Online doesn't have the quite right rulings. Typically, they are pretty good about that these days, but there are some weird corner cases that do pop up. Might also just be a situation where the judge has misunderstood exactly where we're at in the turn, which does occur sometimes. Judges are there to help, but humans make errors.
I wonder exactly what the players are talking about. Very, very curious. Maybe we can get Dark Depths pulled up on screen real quick, just so we can get the exact text on it, because it is like I said, a confusing card, and I think it has two different triggers. Go ahead.
I think I know what it is. I think the judge thinks it's a state-based thing on when it has no triggers, like it has no counters. No, and I do not think it is actually a state-based thing. Whereas, like, if this was a creature, for example, and we had like bolted the creature where like Death Shadow would gain the life, it would just instantly die and there wouldn't be a chance to respond. I think that it might be the communication thing here of like this Dark Depths has, like something, and it does put a trigger on the stack. So looks like the Thespian stage here. Now we're there. Dom was like, okay, sorry, let me figure out exactly what I'm supposed to be doing here.
Yeah, so once again we have decided to keep the Thespian stage copy of Dark Depths, which has no counters on it, and then it has an ability which says when it has no counters, then sacrifice it, and then it's an if you do, which means that if Dom wastelands that Thespian stage copying Dark Depths before it gets sacrificed, no 2020.
Yep. Dom can do this multiple ways. There's crop rotation. There's various other things. There's the crop rotate. We floated the Ancient Tomb mana. That way we can maybe make a construct or activate our Elvish Reclaimer. And it looks like he is out loud saying, I'm going to wasteland it now. Which you do not get the 2020.
Yep. Because, again, it's sacrifice it, then if you do. So because you're not actually sacrificing it to its own ability, it's destroyed by the Wasteland. There is no 2020 to be generated.
Yep.
And I mean, look at Corey's board now, right? Corey has two white sources, a Mox Diamond, the Elvish Reclaimer, and a Safekeeper, and Dom's just going to be churning out constructs. And even next turn, Dom can just do the same thing that we talked about with the boots, where he can go make the third construct, get whatever, some mana, play a mana source, equip the third construct, and then just put Corey on a 2-turn clock here. And it's really hard for Corey to like. The way out for Corey is set up the combo again, but it's really hard to do that on this low resources.
Yep.
Sejiri Steppe in hand. That's really not where you want that one, Mason.
Yeah. That is probably the worst place to have it.
Yeah. Well, the best place to have it would be in the sideboard, but
true, because then you can tutor it with Wish. I see where you're coming.
Well, I was just going to say it wouldn't be in my deck, but in any case,
gotcha.
We have in Urza Saga making another construct here, and then that can go ahead and fetch. So we've gotten the boots, we've gotten the needle. What else do we have to get here?
Not sure.
Could map for another one. Could get a Shadowspear if those are still in the deck. Maybe a Haywire Mite to blow up. Ooh, Haywire Mite to blow up Corey's green source is nice.
Yeah, I like the Haywire Mite just as a thing, too, just to hold over the game,
Yeah.
It's like Dom's just double checking Corey's graveyard, seeing what could go wrong for him.
Yeah, I guess the one kind of upside or the one good news if you're a Corey fan is we do have the Flagstones, which means that the Reclaimer can sack the Flagstones and go up on mana. And Dom is going to go ahead and grab that Shadowspear. Oh, well, I don't know if it would come up, but Shadowspear does have some flavor text, Mason.
No, it's true. Shadowspear removes Hexproof and Indestructible. So that could make it so your Dark Depths wins the war. And I think between that and sort of like the way we've seen Dom play the game, it makes sense this in his deck. He's very much taking the I'm going to sit here and just sort of kill you plan, slowly and steadily. Sort of, taking this like I will never act first role.
And so this is kind of very interesting, Mason, where remember how we talked about in the beginning where we thought Corey was ahead because he was like the more aggressive deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost as if Dom has taken a control role, right? You wouldn't normally associate lands with, a deck that can generate a 20/20 in the third turn of the game as a control deck, but Dom with those 4 Swords to Plowshares has almost transformed his deck to where if Corey's going to play the aggressive role, then Dom is just going to say, okay, I'm just going to kill all of your stuff and sit back on these construct tokens.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see Corey move to a chump block potentially here with this Sylvan Safekeeper. Corey is getting attacked for lethal. Yeah, lands of old used to, be a control deck, and we're seeing it now sort of play this role. And I think that's one of the big strengths of this deck, right? Is it gets to play lots of different roles. Sometimes you kill, sometimes you sit there. Especially the Tabernacle Pendril Veil days, those were the times. And we're going to activate Reclaimer.
It's just hard for me to associate a deck that can turn 1 or turn 2 a 20/20 with a control deck, but it does have the ability to do that, and we're seeing that on full display here in this game.
I would say lands is not a linear deck and can just do lots of things.
That's true.
So it gets to have multiple shapes. As we are going to see Maze of Ith pull up. Yeah, and this is sort of what I meant earlier too, right? Like we're talking about here, a little bit of chat, a little bit here about how lands like used to be kind of be a control deck, but now it kind of gets to be everything. And sort of like as time and new cards have come out, the deck has really evolved to be more than that. And before it could always 20/20 on turn 1, turn 2, but now that's like much more a realistic plan instead of playing cards like Grove and Punishing Fire and hoping to like one your opponent to death essentially.
Right.
It's just interesting to see sort of the evolution of time and like players' understandings, and the format shifts obviously. So the incentives change, but
yeah, and it feels like with the printing of Elvish Reclaimer, you kind of have the added redundancy on finding the 20/20 when you want to, but also finding your control pieces when you want to, right? So you have the ability to play a much more like you have the ability to do either thing. As we see, Corey's going to pack it up, and that is going to be Dom Harvey advancing to the semifinals.
Yeah, what can we say? Dom is on his war path for the W. Dom doesn't lose. He doesn't lose in Legacy. He just doesn't lose. You've never seen Dom do it. You follow him on Twitter, you're going to see this happen. But let's go check out our backup feature matches. Connor Mullally is trying to get a W himself and take Dom down. Playing the 5-color control deck, and he was against, I believe, Teamer Delver. It might have been Grixis. It's been about an hour-ish now since I last checked, but
I think it was Teamer.
That sounds right.
Yeah, Connor, this was the 8-1 seed. Connor was the 8 seed, and Tim Hatch is his opponent on the 1 seed. And we are going into game number 2 with Tim, believe it or not, Mason, winning game number 1.
Wow, that is impressive. This feels like a spot where, Teamer Delver can obviously win anything, but if the game goes long, and it feels like it has been, we're just now coming to this, we're live. It's impressive to see that sort of come out there. But, Tim has been putting up a great run at our events. We saw him lose to another person in the top 8, Sean Gallagher, in the finals of our standard open with Esper. So Tim has been on a great run and, showing his prowess.
Yeah, so the 5-color control deck here for Connor. We saw this on camera not too many rounds ago. This is the Xander's Lounge special, and then for Tim, just pretty classic Teamer Delver. This is what you would expect to see out of a Delver deck at this point: the Delvers, the Channelers, all the removal spells, bolts, brainstorms, Force of Wills, dazes, And yeah, we definitely said that Connor was a heavy favorite in this matchup. But, Delver sometimes does the Delver thing where it's just play a threat on turn one, daze your first spell, Wasteland you, and sometimes you just don't get to play Magic against this deck.
Looks like Tip's going to Force of Will, pitching Force of Will on this Up the Beanstalk. Going to Surveil. Connor's going to let that trigger happen before he lets you know if he's going to counter back. Good Titanical Blade there. Looks like Connor's got some lands and some Fire Blast. Tim left the card on top, like Lucian.
Yeah, and we see, the Beanstalk is something that you definitely want to fight over, especially the Delver deck does want to win the game as quickly as possible, but it can play a bit of a longer game, stuff like Brainstorm and things of that nature. So you want to make sure that Beanstalk is not providing Connor this overwhelming, insurmountable amount of card advantage as we see Wasteland going after the Tropical Island.
Yep. Connor's going to untap.
Any specific choice on which one you would target there? My guess is you want to either prevent another Beanstalk or potentially a Carpet of Flowers.
Yeah, that would be my thought too, is, I would assume Connor, and the deck lists are open, right? So Tim is going to know sort of which colors Connor is leaning on. But I think the idea being that if Carpet or Beanstalk comes down, you might be in big trouble. So let's try to fight over those.
Yep. We see Dragon's Rage Channeler getting in there. Not quite delirious, only 2/4 of the way there. That's a half. I'm good at math. And a gorgeous, gorgeous Tropical Island here played for Tim.
Yeah. We're going to see Connor tanking. It looks like a little end of turn Brainstorm. The rare end of turn Brainstorm.
Yeah, it does have the fetch land available. See if Tim wants to fight over this. We got, I believe it's a Spell Pierce.
Yep. We're binning Delver.
What's that card, Mason?
I already said it was Delver.
How do you know it's Delver?
Because I'm a professional. As we do see Connor tanking if he wants to fetch here. Now it looks like he's going to take the draw step.
What if that was a Lava Glide pathway?
No, it has the thing on the top left.
All right. Yeah, true. Never mind.
Yep.
We see Connor going fetching here. We're going to get the Triome. Oh, we untapped. Never mind. Okay. This is Connor's turn. Be going to get a Savannah. Let's see what Connor wants to deploy here. A lot of good 3-drops here. Could potentially have a Fable the Mirror Breaker. Perhaps something like an Uro. I guess that's really it. But yeah, Connor is just trying to, make sure that doesn't take too much damage, and we're on instant creature land, so still not quite delirious here for Tim.
Looks like it's a life from the loam for Connor.
That one's pretty good against Wasteland.
Yeah, I know it's good against it as Force of Negation. That's going to exile that life from the loam.
Yeah, normally counterspelling a life from the loam, not the best, but Force of Negation, specifically the fact that it exiles, is massive here for Tim. We're going to keep the card on top as well. That's going to be, I believe, a Lightning Bolt. So Tim's just saying, or a Chain Lightning rather. So Tim is just saying, you know what? Let's just get you dead. And that is, I believe, the 4th type for Delirium as well. So Connor's going to go ahead and take 3 from the chain, 3 from the Channeler, fall to 11. And I think I might have spotted another red card in Tim's hand. Potentially has another bolt as well.
Yeah, I couldn't make it out if it was a bolt or a blast, but it's definitely one of those. And this is a real clock here from Tim. As Leyline Binding is going to come down for 2 mana. It's going to answer that DRC. And Connor was under the gun, but Tim needs to find some new pressure. And this is sort of about where Connor wants to be. He wishes he had probably one more land or something else in play, but we're on low resources now. Battlefield's empty. Let's just kind of figure out some way to take control of the game and move forward. As Tim brainstorms, puts back a Daze, another card.
Yeah, and I think Tim is correctly identified that he does not want to, if he can avoid it, does not want to try and extend the game. Wants to try and get the game over with as quickly as possible, and had a pretty good start there to do so with the Channeler and the Chain Lightning. But Connor able to resolve that Leyline Binding, and Tim is going to be desperately looking for another threat here.
Ponder, shuffle, normal mode,
a little shuffle here and then.
Yep.
So Tim, I'm pretty sure it's a red card. I think it might be a bolt. This Tim's last card. The try and find something like a Murktide Regent. Be a pretty good threat to be able to slam here.
Picked up a Daze off the Ponder. Connor's got a Force of Will, Polluted Delta. Bolt. Going to pick up a Yorion and play the Delta for turn.
Oh, it's Big Bird time.
Del with a draw from Tim.
Okay, not too bad. That's the sort of the pressure that Tim was potentially looking for. And, we both know that Connor has an answer lined up to that in the form of the Blast. I believe a Force of Will as well in Connor's hand.
Yeah, I imagine we'll see Connor fetch something like the Triumph or the Surveil land here. This is a pretty good spot to just do that, untap, play your Blast. No reason to walk into a Daze.
It just, I don't know, Mason. Every time I see the Triumph, it brings me joy.
It's really funny. It's funny because I think it's probably good too. You see Tim smiling. He's like, the Triumph made its way into Legacy. I'm going to Wasteland that one.
Yeah, players definitely having a conversation about the Triumph.
Yeah.
That's you can probably assume that every single time Connor fetched that Triumph, his opponent just gave him like a raised eyebrow,
Yeah.
You sure about that one, Connor?
Well, imagine when he cycled at the end of their turn. That's the one that really got the eyebrow.
Oh my god, and the life from the Loam too? Oh no.
A little infinite.
Say it ain't so.
5 beta, draw a card. Say less.
Say less. Pick up two fetch lands while you're at it. Don't try to sell it short.
That's true. Speaking of selling short, Connor's got Witherbloom command from his Greasefang deck and Pioneer, ready to go after it. I like this from Connor. Just Witherbloom, and I think buy back a lands the mode he wants.
It seems like Connor has what I'm looking at when I'm looking at this deck list. It seems like Connor has shuffled his modern deck, his Pioneer deck, and his Commander deck together and just chosen 80 random cards.
Looks like Connor decided to gain 2 life. I actually really like this. He was on the verge of getting, the one more iteration of getting attacked by a Delver or a DRC. So going up to 12 is the same for those, but now he can fetch and it not be a problem, where before he would have lost 1 turn on the clock.
All right, see a Dragon's Rage Channeler here for Tim.
What about a Meticulous Archive for Connor? Get a little Surveil going on.
Love it. Gotta love it.
Yeah, you can tell Connor's thinking, if I go for this Yorion, am I going to get Dazed? Am I going to get Forced? How can I beat that? Because if he just plays the Yorion, he does have the DRC checked.
So we are going to get that Meticulous Archive. I'm getting word from our producer that this is the last game. So as soon as we if we potentially go to a game 3, we will have that live for you in just a moment.
Yep. And the rest of the top 8. So make sure, buckle in. We're going to have more Magic right away. So we are finishing out our top 8 today. Connor surveilling. Looks like he's taking a big think on this one. It's going to bin Uro.
That's a pretty good one to put into the graveyard.
Tim gave him the nod like, yep, I'm dead. That's a problem one. And if you're a Connor Lele fan, you got to be feeling pretty good about that one, because now Connor has the Uro, drew the Swords to Plowshares. That is going to eat up that DRC. And now Connor just gets to pass the turn.
Yeah, Swords to Plowshares takes care of the DRC, and now Tim's got no pressure. Connor had a very, very healthy 11 life. Tim's going to really need to try and find a threat. And it just seems very, very difficult here. Connor does, I guess, only have 1 green source here, so is not able to flash back that Uro quite yet. But as soon as he finds a second green source, probably going to see him slam that.
Yep. Looks like a Delver secret was found. Connor can blast that one if he wants to as well. You see him untap.
Yeah, Connor still has the blast available. Trying to find a green source here to be able to get back that Uro, and hey, that's a green source.
Yeah, get that forest. get that Uro back into the battlefield. We have the Elemental Blaster protecting the Force. We got an extra mana, even if we do that to fight through a daze. And I don't know if Connor has cards that check Delirium, but it looks like he is making sure he has Delirium.
Yeah, looking at Connor's deck list, I don't see anything specific. Not that I can tell. So
yeah, might just be double checking.
But there is a Mystic Sanctuary, so maybe he wants to keep the spells in the graveyard.
Yeah, that part makes sense. Gonna get an Uro trigger. And that Uro is just going to race this Delver incredibly well. We are too low. I'm sorry, we are not low enough for Tim to race us here at 14 for Connor. The Blast on top.
Yeah, Blast is not too bad here for Tim. That can take care of the Uro. At least, before it's able to attack, and Connor's going to have to wait until we get enough to escape it again. As we see a Delver get into the red zone, that is going to meet the blast from Connor. And it seems really, really, Tim, like I said, Connor is very able to answer almost every single threat that Tim plays. So, it's very, very hard for Tim to keep something in play.
Yeah, Croxa and Uro just do such a good job, too, of like chugging through resources, right? Like Uro draws cards, can't really die. Same with Croxa, except it's discarding. And so Tim is going to have to blast this here, but Connor's already one spell away from that matter. And it looks like he's just going to Wasteland down the Volcanic Island and bring back the Uro. And this is what we're talking about. Tim's forced to do that play, but Connor just gets to do this again. And even if it gets forced, who cares? Connor will do it again in like 4 or 5 turns and be in a fine spot.
All right, I have located Tim's out. There is in Tim's sideboard, we have one singular copy of Price of Progress. Now, Tim's keeping his hand pretty close to him, so I don't know if that's in hand right now, but if we can find a red source, that potentially could be enough because that, Connor is aware of that too. That's why we wastelanded that red source.
Yeah, also, I just saw Connor, he drew the tropical and counted his lands. Remember, Connor is at 14 right now, not actually 11. We haven't got that updated for you quite yet. And so he was like, hey, if I get, Price of Progress, what happens here? Goes to 2, keeps attacking.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to tell Tim's hand, but Chad is saying that there might be a Price of Progress in there. Tim's doing a very good job of keeping his hand close to his chest, but yeah.
Yeah, Connor has his Force of Will plus Yorion that he's just been sandbagging for the entire game, trying to set up a spot for it to matter.
And
yeah.
That does not make red mana.
Doesn't make red mana. Doesn't make the plan any better either, as we see Connor gain 3 more life go up. And Connor, honestly, is kind of incentivized to hold lands, right? He has Brainstorm in his deck, has more mana to, he knows what to do with.
Yeah. Yeah, so we see the life total updated Connor now at 20. So, definitely not in the range of that Price of Progress anymore, as we see a Triumph of St. Catherine, and if that Uro was not enough to put him out of range, the Triumph is, and we're going to go to game number 3 here.
Yes, that's very well played by both those players. We're going to head into game 3. Devin, who you thinking? Who you want?
I mean, I still do like Connor's position in the matchup. I know Tim is going to be on the play for game number 3, but you have to imagine that Connor is a pretty sizable favorite here, is able to just kill basically everything that Tim plays. The one thing that Connor has to keep in mind is that one copy of Price of Progress, but, like you said, you saw Connor counting the lands, wastelanding the red sources. He is aware of that's how he's going to lose this game.
Yeah, we're going to have to see if we can keep that good play up. I think, Tim being on the play for game number 3 is a huge, huge help. If Tim had been on the draw going into this last game, I think it'd be massively favoring Connor. But Tim being on the play, he at least can maybe do something like Delver, daze you, wasteland your land, and just put Connor in the Stone Age. Connor does need mana for a lot of his spells, and they're not as efficient as Tim's. But to see as a DRC off of Volcanic Island is to start to then Connor just wastelands Tim immediately. And Tim's like, nope, had another land. Connor's like, hey, gotta try.
It's pretty funny to see like the aggressive Delver deck on the play. That's the deck that usually wants to wasteland people. And then, the 5-color control deck that's trying to play 10,000 turns. And Connor's just like, yeah, get it out of here.
Yep.
Love it.
Polluted Delta, going to be the fetch. Might this be the Meticulous Archive? It's probably going to be a land to respond and kill the DRC. Yeah, give it the Xander. Yeah, it feels like we're probably responding to kill the DRC, but it would be funny if we just were like, got to get it in so I don't get stifled or something like that. Looks like going to be Hydroblast on the DRC off basic island.
Yeah, playing around Wasteland. Connor very aware that is one of Tim's path to victory here. Is just, and we didn't get to see game number 1, but Tim did win game number 1, and Tim was our 1 seed, I believe. Yeah, Tim was the 1 seed. So it is entirely possible that Tim on the play just did the Delver thing, right, where you just go 1 drop, daze your spell, Wasteland you, and then game's over. So Connor, fetching the basic lands because he does not want that to happen.
Yep. But you see, Tim thought about forcing there, but decided to hold it for a card like Up the Beanstalk. If you let Up the Beanstalk go on the battlefield, it's going to be pretty tough for your Delver deck to actually keep up. Even if you have the answers, all their cards just replace themselves.
Yeah, and Tim with a Thundering Falls here. There is the Wasteland, and here's another copy of Dragon's Rage Channeler. Keep the threats flowing here for Tim. See if Connor has a Beanstalk, and definitely does. And we saw Tim fight over it in game 2. You would presume that Tim's going to fight over it as well here.
Yep. We're going to see a Force of Will pitching a Brazen Borrower. Connor's going to let that Surveil happen before he lets him know if the Force is going to happen. Connor's nonverbal looks like it is going to be the way. As he puts the Sorcerer in the graveyard. That should be Delirium between DRC, Chain Lightning.
Sorcery land, instant creature, yeah. So it's an attack for 3. And Tim's going to be able to Wasteland that drop. See if we have a second threat here for Tim. This is the big question. Does not have a second threat. Okay.
Yeah, needs to have a protection spell. Now, if we're just holding on to cantrips, and we're going to be in trouble. Looks like a Carpet of Flowers has come down, and that is a lot of mana generation for Connor. Even though Tim has these Wastelands, which might have been a way to steal things, Connor's going to be getting 1 mana for every island Tim has.
Yeah, and Carpet of Flowers is very good at fighting against Wasteland because, Wasteland is obviously good at mana denial, but Carpet kind of gives you that mana back. And you see Tim doesn't have a land in hand, but even if he did, he probably wouldn't want to play it here. And I see a couple of red cards in Tim's hand. So, potentially if Connor goes low enough, that maybe could be a possibility here.
Tim's got to start Wastelanding himself, deny Connor. As we do see a bull putting a Sylvan Library into the graveyard off the Surveil, putting Connor down to 9. Yeah, you're right. I mean, Tim is about to get Connor. Connor's at 6. This is dangerously low. We talked about Price of Progress. Connor can't play around Price of Progress at this point in the game. He's going to have to play his non-basics if he's going to want to, stay in this game, even with the Carpet of Flowers. He just needs to get lands on the battlefield to cast cards.
We see a Polluted Delta here, and so there is a red card in Tim's hand. I can't quite get a good glimpse of what it was as he picked up a Force of Negation, but if this attack puts Connor to 3, and you have to imagine Tim just has a Force of Negation and a Force of Will in hand, Connor's going down to 2 life. I'm not really sure, what the context of Connor's hand is, but this is looking very, very good for Tim here.
Yeah, Connor's going to need to draw something like Brainstorm into an answer plus a way to protect it, and it needs to be something like a Solitude, like a Leyline Binding that the Reb can't fight over, because Tim does have the Force pair like you talked about.
Yeah, perhaps I was going to say a Miracle Triumph of St. Catherine, but that one could just get Force of Willed, so we kind of have that one covered.
Yep. Oh.
You got a Miracle?
A Miracle?
Maybe?
Oh, no. It was the
Surveil.
Archive.
Okay.
It was the Archive. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot too. I was like, that doesn't do anything, but
that was the drop
I respect
for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really see what's in Connor's hand at all. There's a Mystic Sanctuary. We are putting a Hydro on top. That makes sense. That one deals with Channeler. And we have Yorion. Okay.
Yeah,
that one is going to get Force of Willed, and that's going to do it. Tim taking the match over Connor. You see the Delver, we definitely said that Connor had a pretty big edge in the matchup, but Tim was the 1 seed, and that's what happens when you're the 1 seed.
Yeah, like we said, right? Like Tim had the ability to go Delver, do the disruption thing, put Connor on the back foot, and congratulations, Tim Hatch, doing that there. Moving on to our semifinals. We're going to take a quick break, let those players get a second, and we're going to be right back here in a minute with our semifinals, so don't go anywhere.